Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the podcast. I am joined by an amazing guest, Mr. Raju. Raju is the founder and CEO of Rethink Lab, and he is passionate about empowering early stage startups in Thailand to achieve success. Raju has over 15 years of experience in product strategy and startup acceleration. He brings a wealth of expertise to help you navigate the journey of building and scaling your business. His approach is particularly valuable for startups here as he specializes in providing comprehensive, strategic guidance tailored to the local ecosystem. If you already have a prototype in hand or you're at the ideation stage, Raju will assist you every step of the way. If you're ready to launch your idea here, connect with Raju today and book an appointment to discuss how Rethink Lab can be your strategic partner and help you achieve long-term success. I am pleased to be joined with Raju on today's episode of the podcast. Raju, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself and your journey?
My name is Raju, and I'm a founder and CEO of Rethink Lab, and this is where again, as I just said, like we help startups, help them build their product, and be help them launch the product in market as soon as possible because that's what we believe. The journey that I've gone through is that I have been almost like, to be honest, like it's been more like 19 years experience now. I started as a developer before, and I was always working with startup companies through all my life. Has been the good thing is that I've worked with multiple industry, which is like fintech, uh, like agency model, like a service model, and then travel. So all this like different, and e-commerce was my last thing. And all this different industry have taught me like everything in terms of like what a business goes through. And developing, to be honest, was my passion. I was not my education. I'm more like a Bachelor of Commerce person. But developing was something that I was always doing from the very young age. I think I was 15 years old when I started coding. That led to this, becoming a good developer. Then after that, I think I was trying to understand, like I have been doing development for a long time, so what exactly should be the next step? And that's when I discovered product management, which is something that was very much aligned with the way that I was because I've been working in different industry. I know how the technical world also. So now it was more to make that switch to a different role, which is more still aligned with what I was doing. And I think that's when I, changed that role. And then after that, I think I've worked in Central as a head of product for 3 years. And then after that, I decided to start my own company because I realized that there's a good. So the goal was that we want to support startups and then help them bring them idea to the market as soon as possible. Now with my good technical experience as well as a product management experience, I will be able to help them, get to the market as fast as possible because again most of the time it's more about clarity that's the founder don't have. They're thinking of too much. They are trying to like build too much. So this is where we come in. We basically work with the startup founders, help them define what they should be working on, help them also do a bit of idea validation with their early users, and then once they find that traction, then you go to the next step, which is scale, right? So that's what we are doing at the moment. Yeah.
That sounds really interesting, and your journey is very vast and very long, like a background in commerce, and then you worked in many different startups, then eventually leaving to start your own startup. And I mentioned in the introduction about your passion for empowering early stage startups. So where did this passion come from? And knowing that you've worked for many other startups before, and was this the main driving force to creating and establishing Rethink Lab?
For me, I believe since I was almost I was like say 15 years old. I think since then, I think even before that, right? I think I would say that because my father was a businessman, and I think building something was I was always passionate about, even from the very young age. So the main thing was that like after I passed out my school, right, which is like my 10th standard, I came. I was in a boarding school, so I came to, started coming back to started staying with my parents after that. So I think it was more like I was super passionate about computers. This is like I'm talking year 2000. And we started like I went into all this like coaching classes, and then when I started programming, I think the main thing that I was always driving me was to build something my own, right? I think building product is something that I was very passionate about, and I was always building something every, I would say, 3 months or so. So building product was something that was not very difficult for me because I would say that I was like kind of like one of the best developers in the coaching classes, right? Probably not the world, but in the coaching classes, because we would like when I learned something new, I was always like doing that. So I think that passion was always there to build something from very young age. And when I became like when I started working, it was also very difficult for me to get a job because I was a commerce background, not a engineering background. But luckily, a startup actually took a chance with me. Then they wanted to build their entire CRM kind of system where the inquiry come in, and then you log in all the inquiries, and then you see that journey from inquiries to like actual booking done. So that was the first platform that I built for them, and then I went to another, I would say, not fintech company, but a mutual fund company, which was more like about showing the portfolio. So I think all that experience, and then I started my own agency, right? So which was again building products and supporting all the startup was always there. So when I came to Thailand, and I think 2017. I think the more thing that I saw was that this is where I was very much connected with the startup ecosystem. With this kind of startup that I came to Bangkok, which basically changed the way that I see how things are and why it's very important to prioritize better versus like bootstrap. I think since you can still go slow and then not worry that much, you still need to prioritize, but since it's founder led, it's you have like a bit more they usually go slow, right? Because they don't have that much money, so they usually like to go slow and then start building up. But with investor money or like VC money, they are like they already have like huge money now, so now they need to like find a way to scale fast, right? And that's why the prioritization comes in place, and that's what you need to understand how to do with that, right? So when I was in Central at the very last year, I think it was more like I realized, like that's what is missing, right? So like you need to have that experience of both bootstrap approach. You need to also have that VC approach. You need to have that passion for building product. And I've been thinking of starting my own company, to be honest, like since 2000. To be honest, I started my own company agency like 2010. And then after that, I just like was working with the team because I realized that I was missing that team management skills, which basically I gained a lot in my later part of the career. And then when I decided to make that switch, I realized that now it's the right time because I'm passionate about building products. I'm passionate about supporting these founders because sometimes, again, as I said, like they're lost and there is like clarity that is missing in that case. So I wanted to help get that company set up. That's going to help them drive that thing. So that's when I think I made that decision that, you know what, it's time now. I've been doing this for almost like 15, 16 years now. So it's time to, go to the market and then find your way to, help these founders and then get them out in the market as soon as possible.
That sounds great, and it's a great thing that you're doing. You're helping startups, like you said, people who are lost, help navigate their journey. And, with your experience, I think it's very spectacular, I would say, because, like everything had to happen one by one, like you mentioned. Startup took a chance with you, and then, you were always having this passion for building products and stuff. And I think one of the things that you do is as a leader, you have your own agency and you lead a team that is dedicated to help startups. So when you're helping your team and also you have this passion of like building products and you also want to help people have direction in terms of what they want to create and what they want to do going forward, what sort of tips are you giving your team to help guide them on helping startups and bringing their digital products to life?
So for my team, I think it's also same thing, right? I think they also need to have that I would say passion for building products, right? Because I've worked with different teams who probably are just like there to work, right? But then like you have to let them go or like you stop working with them because I think I usually work with contractors and freelancers even now. But then I also have my own internal team. But the idea is again, when I hire them or when I work with them, I think the goal is to see how passionate they are about building products, right? Because I think that passion or that goal needs to match to your company, I would say, ideals, right? Because if that is not that is a mismatch, then I think it's better to like not hire them, right? Then learn later on. But then again, I think the vision and the drives that I always, or like even the tips that I give to both my, I would say, my team as well as the startup founders are, again, is to define the goal first, right? I think clearly. And then once you have the defined goal, then it's my job to basically build the process, because I worked in, to be honest, I think the good thing that happened was that when I moved to Central was that I was again more chaotic approach, right? So like, because startup is more chaotic, you're like doing everything one by one. You have to like make sure that you're working on 10 different things at the same time. But working in Central actually gave me that process approach, right? I think like, how can you actually systemize your process, and how can you make sure that things goes in a particular flow, so that you can then see that end result, right? Because if you're doing multiple things at the same time, it's never going to happen, right? And that's why I think even like a company like Central and many startup, basically they also have a budget allocated for a particular year, right? So with that limited budget constraint that you have, how do you prioritize what is really important to work on, right? And I think that principle is what helped me to understand like how to prioritize better, how to, focus on matrix that really matters. So, and then how to build that process, right? And then once you define the process, it takes that early, I would say, 2 3 weeks for your team to get along, to understand the process, how easy, or like how difficult or how easy it is. But once they are able to go into that process, even the same thing that happens with founders, we when we do a discovery process, there's a discovery process for them. But for team, I think it's more about how do you build a product that you launch every single day, right? So instead of like not just like launching it after like 3 months, 4 months, or like 2 weeks later, like in a sprint wise that we follow, like but then we also try to like make sure that they push every single day, right? So that whatever that has been done, is released, so that the founders has the chance to test it out and then give feedback. Obviously we're not going to be putting the feedback immediately unless like it's a bug, right? But the goal is again to, if you ever want to organize in a very good way, the best thing as a founder that you can do is to set a process that works. And then once you build that process, then it's about like following that flow, right? And again, the process is going to have problem, right? Like you'll have to customize the process a bit here and there, but it's just about getting that feedback and then improvising that same thing, right? So again, your process is more like your startup anyways. So you build that process, you improve it. If it doesn't work, then you start changing it. And which means that you also need to have an open mind in terms of how do you take the feedback from others, whether it's going to be from startup founders or whether it's going to be from your team, so that you then as a founder need to improve that process. So I think having that solid process is going to help both users as well as your team as well as your founders. So build that process early to organize your team better.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Having a structured process is really important. But with startups, like we mentioned, it's a lot of, you have to learn. There's a lot of refinement, and, you learn as you go and with your journey with your internal team. But in general, I'm pretty sure that at Rethink Lab, you have like a tailored approach, which is to support those, like we mentioned in the introduction, someone who has either a product or at the ideation stage. So how do you tailor your support to align with the stage that they're in and to help them achieve their goal?
So I think in our case, I think it's more I would say, like, you can come to us at a very early stage, right? I think the goal was that, again, even for us, I think we do have multiple different, I would say, packages that we have built, right? Because again, most of the founders are usually, they already have something like I mean, again, there are different kind of founders. One is like someone who's like super non-technical. They don't know how to build a product. They have a good business already going on, right? So these are our ideal clients, like, because they have a business going on and they want to digitalize, they want to make sure that everything is online. So they come usually with us with like a broad idea, right? Okay, like we want to build this, we are doing this like operation, and that everything is there, but we want to systemize this and make it a thing. So if they just come up with an idea, we basically first help them to see whether the idea has, like something in it, right? Like whether, so how do you validate that idea is going to be success, right? So I think, so if you already have a business, right, which means that idea is already success, right? So which means that now you just want to digitalize that particular idea. But some founders usually come with us where they have zero idea in terms of like what they will be achieving, right? So what we recommend them is to help them build the idea validation first, right? To build a landing page and then try to drive users on that landing page and then see like who sign up for this thing. It's more about like showing an interest in your product that you're trying to build, right? So once you get that idea validated, then you are able to then go to the next step, which is like doing a more of customer interviews, talking to the people who have signed up, and then trying to see if there's a problem that they have. And it's a problem that, the product can solve, right? And again, asking open-ended question is what's going to be helping them. So again, from different, I would say, different stages of the founders, you need to take a different approach, right? Some founders may have already validated an idea. They might just come to us to build the product. So that's also something that we do, right? And if they want to just build a prototype, right, to show to investors, we can also do that, right? So I think it starts with more like project discovery and then understanding and validating the idea. And then again, also helping them to not work on 100 of features, right? Just but like limiting that features to only like 4 to 5, which is going to drive that early traction for their product. And then if it is design, and it's just like again focusing more on the design and its development, it's the same thing, right? Like you will not be able to do development without doing the product strategy with me first, right? So which means that we will make sure that you only focus on things which is really important. So that's what we are more different. We don't just listen to founders. I mean, we definitely listen to them, but it's more about guiding them in terms of what is the right thing to do, right? And not just like work as like, oh, this is our developer, just take it and do whatever you want. That's the approach that I did not want to take. And I also believe in more agile approach where, having a small team is going to drive more, I would say, uh, goals for you, and like making sure that you are able to achieve those goals faster than having like just like developers. Because I've met a founder, I think I would say like 3 months back, when I talked to him, and then he was working with developers for almost 3 months, and it was just the founder and the developers directly, right? And there was no project manager or anyone in between. And the project just went on for three months, and then in the end, the result was not that great. So I then, like he approached me, and then when I started working with them, I realized that like they're not the good fit, and then we then built a new team, and then we basically made sure that the process is followed, and I work with the founders to make sure that like we systemize the flow in terms of like how the things will be developed, what needs to be developed first, and then what needs to be developed later on after MVP, right? So that's basically where we come in, and then we already got like good feedback in just like 1 week. Like, the way, even that we haven't started even developing anything yet, right? But in that processing and the planning phase is already where the founder saw value, right? So I think that's what, drives, me to help them, like not just like build what they are looking for, but guiding them and then making sure that they understand like what is going to drive them more, and how exactly they will be achieving their goals better. That's what basically I think I would say we have a bit of advantage over other agencies. Yeah.
That's actually quite interesting. And you mentioned about MVP. So my next question to you is how are you able to prioritize the development of MVPs while also building scalable web and mobile applications? And do any of these require more attention than the other?
MVP and scalable application is like, to be honest, like it's anyways like not related, right? It's like different, right? But again, when you have an experience of, I would say, almost like 19 years, right? I think you already know uh, how exactly you want to build your product, right? And we, from day one, I think we already have like a, not a scalable approach, like super scalable approach, but we have a process in place so that if the future, the product scale in the future, your system is able to support that, right? So, and again, these are systemized, and these are like, to be honest, like it's even easier now with all the different tools that we have. There is something called Astera that you can use to systemize your entire, like I would say, infrastructure and everything. So, and you have all these, like I would say, template kind of thing that is already there, right? So building a scalable application, to be honest, in 2025 is the easiest thing that you can do. But again, we also keep in mind that startup founders don't have budget, right? So we usually don't try to go crazy in terms of like we don't do over engineering. we try to like limit them to like very smaller scale first, right? And then once you start growing, then you can start scaling the infrastructure later on, right? But then again, that comes with more of the infrastructure kind of like level. And even in that infrastructure level, it's more like if you see like we are doing that MVP approach, right? Like what is the minimum thing that is needed and what can be implemented so that it's scalable and not just like, we limit it by one particular thing, right? So that's a different thing. And but then when it comes to feature MVP, right, this is where we basically work with founders and then we do basically a MVP workshop with them, where basically we are able to define what exactly are the key thing that we should be working on. There's a good, I would say, framework that we use, which is called as user story mapping, where you are able to list on the entire journey of the of your user, what they will be going through, and then listing down features. This is really critical, to be added in the particular flow, right? And that basically helps them to define what is really important and what can be actually moved in the next phase or in the next phase later on, right? So that is something that we usually work with them. And again, there are various different techniques that can be used to define your MVP. But the goal is to figure that MVP out first. And then once you define that clearly, then you know that what exactly your infrastructure would look like, right? So again, infrastructure wise, to be honest, as I said, like it's a very pretty standardized approach now. And 2025 is going to be very easy. But MVP is something that it's very difficult to convince the founders, right? Because founders are passionate about building their product. They want everything, right? They want to make sure that their product that comes out is the best in the market. But these are the founders who usually spend, I would say 1 year, 2 years just to build that product before they see before the users actually see the product. So that's where I think we basically come in and then we tell them, okay, like how can we launch this in phases instead of like doing a bulk launch at the very end of the year? So what can be launched in the 3 months time, right? So if you are given like only 3 months timeline, how would you prioritize this better, right? So once you ask those kind of questions to founders, they know like what is really important for them to, like this thing. So having that time limit is also very important because that drives them to prioritize even better. And that helps us to define like what is really key for this particular founder, right? And now, to be honest, like with MVP, even with like AI tools, because we have started incorporating AI tools in our development process. So we are able to, again, I see that like if it was taking like 3 months time, we are now able to even reduce that to like 1 month. To be honest, like I've seen people launch in 2 weeks with using AI tools, right? Because again, as I said, like now there is templates, now there is like a, things that is already there. Like a blueprint is already there. You just have to like apply it and then start changing a bit just to add your kind of like business logics, right? So I would say, I mean, again, defining MVP is really important, and then having those scalable application for both web and app. I think you are able to just like use the templated thing, right? And then customize that based on the your product needs, right? And to be honest, like even now these customized, I would say, or the template kind of version can just be built using AI, right? You don't even have to, I would say, do it from scratch or like take someone else code, from GitHub or like open source kind of stuff. Because again, not everyone is going to follow your style of coding, right? Because, and your style of coding better. We have in our team also, we have a particular style that the way that we code, the way that we architect our, I would say, application. So you can build this kind of like structure with just using AI. Cursor AI is what we are using right now. Uh, so these kind of applications is going to help you to define MVP and then build a scalable application. Yeah.
So you mentioned a lot about AI and how easy you said in 2025 to build all these sort of things. But in terms of your opinion, do you think that you use a lot of AI in your day-to-day life, and do you think it has helped you and helped your work at Rethink Lab?
I would say that, I mean, again, I started using AI at the very, I think when I first, to be honest, like I came across AI and then all this like ChatGPT, I think that's when it was launching. It wasn't like super, like I was not super like, like super impressed about it. But then again, once I started using that on a daily basis, right, then that's when I realized that I got hooked, right, the way that it is, because I started asking questions which I would usually search on Google, right? And then you have so many lists to go through, and then figure out like what works for best for you. But then with AI tools, like you are able to just like get the answer without going anywhere, right? So ChatGPT is where basically I started, and then I started like getting, asking opinions of everything day to day on that one. And I realized that how easy it is to then, use the best practices, right? Because again, you can ask the question of that, like what is the best practice to handle that. So any process that I see in Rethink Lab, I think we have actually built that through AI, right? I think getting recommendation, obviously, and your experience also matters because again, the context that you give is more important than the result, right? Because you can just give build me a process, and that's just going to give you like a very standardized process that thousands of people are using, but that might not be, like uh, a process that you should be following for startups, right? So then you bring in your own experience, you provide the right context, and then it's able to give you a good suggestions, right? So what I've seen is that like incorporating AI day to day in my process has helped a lot. So I started with ChatGPT with just like basic information, right? And then I started using it for a lot of stuff, like writing articles, writing, I would say my LinkedIn posts that you see, it's able to format it in a much better way. But then again, as I said, like don't just like say write me an article, right? But give the context, like what exactly you want to do it, and then AI also learns from you, right? Like it's able to learn the tone of your voice, it's able to learn how you write your messages, right? So it's able to personalize your content according to that. And but for me, I think it was more about also like incorporating AI for automation, right? Because I do receive like multiple like inquiries, for project inquiries and everything. And I do realize that I was spending around like, I would say, let's say like 50 to 60 hours just to build a proposal, right? So this is where the first thing where I started using AI a lot, and then I started like dumping all the the questions that was asked, dumping all the information, and then summarizing that in a much better way. So now I would say I spend to create a proposal, I spend I would say like maybe like max 10 hours, not more than that, right? So incorporating AI in my day-to-day life has helped me a lot to simplify the process, to make my life easier, right?
So we mentioned a lot about Rethink Lab. We talked about AI and we talked about in the introduction your experience and your journey. But for someone like you who has worked with startups and has a startup agency yourself with Rethink Lab, how do you deal with uncertainty while you're building Rethink Lab and the process of kind of establishing this at the very start? What was that like? And were there any strategies you used to overcome those moments of uncertainty?
I think uncertainty is like part of the business. That's what I've learned, to be honest. Like, I was not, when you start a business, you're always like super optimistic, right? You think that once you launch a website, everything is gonna, your leads are gonna start coming up, right? I launched my website on LinkedIn and I got zero inquiries, right? I did a relaunch again, and then again I got zero inquiries, right? So like, oh, let me just start doing, social media ads and everything, right? Zero inquiries, right? So what I realize is that again, you will plan for something and everything is not going to work the way that you're planning, right? So the way that you deal with that is that understand like what exactly is missing, right? And that it's the same thing that I also recommend your founders, right? Because again, this is where most of the founders usually give up and they're like, now it's time to go back. That has also been the case even for me, right? I think last year, I think we were working with a startup which we had payment issues, right? I think we were not paid for almost like 3 months or something. So that also is kind of something that's going to happen, right? So you will have clients, but you will not have payment. You know, you will not have clients, and then you will not have any inquiries, right? So there's going to be uncertainties everywhere and every time, and then the only way for you to understand is that what exactly is missing, right? And then for me, it was more about I was too broad. To be honest, even now we are going to be scaling down our Rethink Lab even further more because I did talk to a lot of founders and everything. And with now with AI tools that I've discovered and everything that I'm doing the way that it is, I realized that again, you have to customize your approach. You have to like define your target audience very much better. That's what I've learned, to be honest. Like I was trying to do everything. My agency was like very broad. As I said, like we will do design, we will do product management, we'll do like development, we'll do strategy, we'll do this. As your target audience, then your messaging becomes too broad, right? Then you and we were also going to be launching our own like one focused agency for, I would say, like hotels, right? And that required marketing also, right? Again, that it was going to be more like of a tie-up with a friend of mine because he has a marketing agency. But then again, when you try to like scale yourself like too much with limited resources, it's always going to be very difficult, right? So all the thing that I, to be honest, like all the advice that I'm giving today is what I've learned in the last 1.5 year, right? As a product manager, I did learn how to work with products, right? But then when you do business, it's very different, right? It's uncertainty is always part of life. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? So, these kind of stuff is going to happen, right? And you just need to be strong enough to basically know that, okay, like these are something that's going to happen and how exactly you're going to be planning your next move, right? Because again, you can have your best plan in picture, but that might be completely out of the picture after that, right? Because you may need to restart, right? So I think developing that, what is the next steps as soon as possible with your limited resources and with your limited knowledge that you have, right? Because again, what's going to happen or like just like, anywhere, right? So you just need to be like learning from that, experience and then see where exactly you need to be going to next, right? And the one thing is also to like do a self-reflect, like, okay, like why exactly I did not receive any bookings, right? Why I did not receive any inquiries, right? Because I was speaking to everyone, right? So I think then you niche down. You then That's what we will be doing, becoming now. So we will be becoming more as a MVP development agency and not everything, right? But then again, including the discovery, including the design, including development, part of that entire package is something that we are now going towards because most of the founders that I've talked to, they just want to build, right? They don't want your opinion, right? So what we decided that why don't we include the opinion also part of the development, right? Because then you are there as a guiding principle for them to make sure that everything is there rather than having a separate dedicated package just for that. Because that was somewhere people are like, oh, I already know what I want to build, right? So why should I spend money on that one, right? So now we are also like customizing the package to make it much more clear. And then we will be launching a new website, I think I would say like by the end of April, uh, which will be more focused on MVP development only. So because we will be specialized MVP development agency, that's it, right? We will not be doing design agency. We are not doing just pure development agency. We are MVP development agency. That's it, right? You come with us when you have an idea, and then we will build your idea in, I would say, in 3 to 4 months, and then launch it. And with AI, we might be able to even like launch it in 1 month, right? So who knows, right? So that's the thing, right? So you need to like be ready with all these uncertainties that's going to happen, but learn why exactly things are not working, right? And then try to figure out what is the next way of you to solve that problem, right? And again, everything is just hypothesis, right? You don't know. I even don't know whether when I launch this MVP development agency, it will work or not, right? But that is just a hypothesis right now. And then you need to then do a bit of small launch and then understand and then get feedback, right? That is something that I was trying to get from my different people. I will talk to a lot of friends. I'll send them to the landing page and then get feedback. And when they recommend me something, then I'll incorporate that and then I test again, right? So it's more about testing it again and again just to see what works. And once you know that what's ticking, then you then focus only on that one, right? Not everything else, right? Then you skip out all the other stuff, right? So again, as I said, like uncertainty is going to happen. Be prepared for that, and be ready to just like be, even like go back to work, right? That's okay, right? I mean, again, it's again all about learning, right? You did something, it did not work, right? So then it's fine to go back and then just like get a secure job, right? Because you may be better, at the moment being there rather than just like trying to drown yourself and go bankrupt, right? So you just have to like plan your uncertainty in a much better way and then have I would say like a plan B, but make sure that you give your all for the plan A, right? And then once you gave your all and it did not work, then you have your plan B to go back to. Yeah.
That's actually quite interesting because for someone like you you had a plan A and then you just took that decision to kind of go with your agency, but you obviously had the passion, you had the drive, you had the willingness to want to create digital products that move industries forward. If we're talking about Rethink Lab, what steps are you taking in particular to create these products, and how do you make these products stand out in the market?
I see. Okay. So I think it's the same thing. I think I've been in all my the entire interview, I think I've been saying the same thing, right? I think I mean the way that you make your product stand out is to ask why exactly we are doing it, right? Why we are building this product and who are we building this product for, right? Most of the time when I meet founders, they are doing it because they think it's a good idea, all right? They think that it's the best thing that they have, it's because they have seen someone else do it, right? In a different country. Maybe they want to implement that in their own country, right? So I would say defining that why is really important, right? Like, why do you really want to build this product and who exactly you want to build this product for? I think once you're able to define that very clearly, then you know like what needs to be built, right? So you'd start with like why, who, and then it comes to like what needs to be built for those kind of problems, right? Because a user will come up with like one problem, and then one problem will have, I would say, 10 different solutions, right? And then which solution to actually pick up is what really important, right? And this is where you can do all those, I would say, user surveys and everything to understand like which are the, key pain point area that I should be focusing on, right? And then you can either start with that prioritizing those kind of stuff, right? Like we do what we call as like effort versus value prioritization, right? So you take the effort and you believe like what is the value that this feature is going to drive you, right? And that's going to give you what should be the one that you should be focusing on first, right? And again, as I said, like everything is hypothesis, right? You test it out and then you see what works. And then that, to be honest, like once your initial traction is done, then you know that you have a very solid product that is ready to go in the market, right? And then you can then launch it very confidently, and you have done the right. You basically did a lot of, testing with your actual users, not your friends and family, right? So you need to basically find a way to onboard this user even before your product launches, right? So do a beta launch, right? Do a soft launch, right? Do a soft launch, get at least 10 users to use it, right? And then get the feedback and then incorporate those feedback if it's important, right? I mean, again, as a user, you will get thousands of features requests because everyone is used to like giving features as a request, but they will never give you problem, right? So try to figure out like what exactly is the problem they are dealing with, right? And then figure out what is the right solution for that, I would say, problem. That basically will help you get more your brand more, I would say, very much impactful, right? And then once you are able to define that clearly, I would say that's going to help you make your product stand out among all the other platform that is there.
So we mentioned a lot about Rethink Lab and your startup journey and your whole journey in general. But I think you can agree that startups are something that you have to live with. You have to work 24/7 with all the time. You have to be on it. So as someone who may be watching this is interested and wants to have their own startup in the future or are in the process of establishing their startup, is there anything you want to prepare themselves for in terms of advice or like suggestions that could help them?
I mean, to be honest, I'll be straight, right? I think to be honest, everyone should try. That's what I believe, right? Because most of the time people are just like stuck with that mindset that I want to build something, and then they just like it just remains dream, right? And they don't take action on those kind of stuff, right? So again, startup is difficult, right? Setting up any business is difficult, right? Like even if you try to, have a very small shop that just sells something, it's very difficult, right? But the one thing that I would say is that the best thing that as a startup founders that you can do is always niche down, right? Like figure out like that one problem that you want to solve, not five problems, just that one problem that you want to solve, right? So if I'm saying that if I'm building a, a, I would say a social media scheduling post, right? So I would say that I will only focus on LinkedIn. That's it, right? Don't focus on Twitter. Don't focus on Reddit. Don't focus on Facebook and everything, right? Just start with that one problem, right? Which means that now your niche become very clear, right? I want to target influencers for LinkedIn who post regularly, right? Someone like me, right? So if I want to build a product like that, I will then be very focused in terms of like who I'm targeting. So I can also like go in further, right? I can define like I'm targeting founders, who are using LinkedIn on a regular basis, posting consistently. These are my target audience, right? And then the way that the next thing that I'm going to be doing is that I'll start interviewing these founders, right? I'll probably like reach out to them on LinkedIn and then ask them that, hey, I'm doing a research on a new product that I'm building. Would you be happy to give us your opinion or your feedback, right? I don't have a product yet. I don't have anything, right? It is just in the ideation phase. We want to get some, I would say, information, right? Which means that you're not selling at the moment, right? Which also helps you to get that, like that initial feedback because people love to give feedback, right? I did not even have a product 6 months or 7 months back. It was just to get their opinion and see how they react. Do they like this idea? Do they think that there's a value in this idea, right? So you start with that, right? You start with those kind of like approach and then get that initial thing, which means that in the future, these founders who says yes, right? Again, you will reach out to 100 people, only 10 people will reply. So also like have that, understanding that you're cold outreaching them. So your reply rate is going to be very bad, right? So don't lose passion just because people have not replied to you, right? Because you may give up at 100, but then the 101 person might have replied to you, right? So just like keep doing that, right? I keep that as a regular habit, and you may still keep your job, right? You don't have to like leave your job. You can still build that idea and then still get that done, validate it even before you jump and start building your own product, right? And if possible, give yourself like a daily time, right? Like maybe like schedule like 2 hours after work or before work, right? Have that time dedicated because then you need to get used to working those extra 2 hours every single day, right? And then once you get that, I would say used to it, and then use that time for outreaching, use that time to build your product, right? And if you're not a developer, you cannot build your product. Then obviously, like now, you can also build prototype with good tools, right? There's Lovable, there is V0, there is Bolt that will basically help you to build the prototype, right? Get the ideas from all these founders and then build the prototype, right? And you don't even need to do coding, right? And once the prototype is built, probably you need to integrate that to different systems and all, which may require a bit more development. That's when you can probably like reach out to developers or like founder, co-founder, technical co-founder, or reach out to agency like mine, right? Which basically help founders to build those like backend systems, right? But the goal is that if you are able to build a prototype and if you're able to test that prototype with your users that you have researched with, right? You are more likely to succeed, right? So I think again, defining the niche, talking to user first, and then building a prototype to test it out, and then launching it, right? I would say that's going to be the one that's going to give you more success rather than just like jumping in the market and then building the product, which is the first step if you're taking, and then reaching out to all these founders and then trying to get that thing. And what if like that idea is like not useful? What if they don't want to use this, right? Then what would you do, right? So I think that's why I think most of the founders get that wrong. They build a product and then they start doing the market research. So do that in a different way, right? Like try to think that you already have a product and then you're reaching out to people, right? How would they react, right? Because if they say no, then it's easy way to say that this idea doesn't have value. Skip this. Let's think about something else, right? So I would say that would be my advice to startup founders. I would say like be passionate, just definitely build something of your own for sure, but do it in the right process so that you fail fast, right? And learn fast, right? Rather than, like learning that, failing that at the very after like 1 or 2 years of spending your time. You do that in like just like 1 month, right? You fail fast and you learn fast. And then once you learn from all those mistakes, you're going to improve in the next iteration, right? You will be doing better in the next second startup. You'll be doing better in the third startup. I've seen startup founders who have failed their first 8 products, but the ninth product clicked, right? And but then again, these are also like failing fast and doing that, not like spending 9 years to build 9 products, right? So that's what I've seen as has the most success. And if you want to build something, give that approach, a go, and then see whether it works for you or not, right? And if it doesn't work, then probably the idea doesn't have that much value. So then think about different idea, right? So there are like thousands of ideas, every day, right? So you don't have to worry about your idea also being stolen, right? That's also something a biggest problem that our founders think. But to be honest, it's all about execution, right? I think your idea, to be honest, will never be unique. As soon as you launch, people will copy the idea, right? So don't worry about your idea being stolen. But unless like it's very proprietary, kind of like, like very unique kind of stuff that you're building, then you can build in stealth mode. But what I've seen now is that when you build in public, you are already building that audience for your product, right? That's what we are also doing for Fitwise. We're trying to build up audience as well as we are trying to communicate with all the trainers and everything. So that helps a bit. And I've already seen like a good, I would say, feedback from people coming in. So yeah, so I would say that my recommendation for all the founders that build something or like sorry, test something before you build. Yeah.
Wow, that's actually some great advice. You not only gave advice on what to do, you also told them how to avoid different struggles and things that might come with, establishing this startup, which I think is very insightful. And as we are approaching towards the end of this interview section of the podcast, I would like to ask you if you could voice one unique message to the world, what would it be?
So the one unique message that I would give to the world is find your clarity, right? We are in a information overload, I would say, uh, era right now, right? Like we have so many things available to us to get all this information, and then you will get advice from thousands of people, even like me, right? So but then again, you need to define like what is very clear to you. So that finding that clarity is something that I would say focus on first, right? Because once you're very clear in terms of what you want to achieve, then you know the path to take, right? So I think find that clarity. I would say that would be the message that I would want to give to the world.
All right. Thank you so much for that message, and thank you so much for your time today, Raju. It was a pleasure having you on as a guest.
It was really good. I mean, this is my first podcast, so it's really nice to, get those opinion and like feedback on this one. Yeah.
No, you were great. You were
All
amazing.
right.
I'm sure my audience learned a lot from what you said in your journey. It's all inspirational. It's unique.
All right.
And
Thanks.
to my audience that is new to the channel, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video if you did enjoy it. And stay tuned for the next episode coming soon. And I'll see you all then for the next episode.
All
Goodbye.
right. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.